Hey everyone, this week I wanted to quickly go over the circle of fifths and kind of how it works. So the circle of fifths is a pretty cool little tool that gives you a relationship diagram between the different key signatures and kind of how they relate with each other, and it allows you to find borrowed chords between them. And I'll go into that a little bit more later, but a borrowed chord is essentially a chord that isn't normally present in the key signature that you're writing in. You take it from another one and then you use it and you incorporate it. So that's what a borrowed chord is, and it'll make more sense once I actually show what's going on. But let's go ahead and jump into this and see what the circle of fifths looks like. Alright, so as you can see, it's a wheel or a circle, obviously, because it's a circle of fifths. The reason why it's a circle of fifths is because if you go clockwise, C to G is a fifth, G to D is a fifth, D to A is a fifth, and so on and so forth. And actually, if you go counterclockwise, it becomes a circle of fourths. So C to F is a fourth, F to B flat is a fourth, and so on and so forth. What this is showing is that A minor is the relative minor of C, and what that means is that both of these scales share the same exact notes, and what also, and kind of going off of that, is they share the exact same chords. They're just written differently or in different orders. So with A minor, you would start at A, and in C major, you would start at C, but at the end of the day, all the chords and all the notes between these two scales they're literally the exact same thing. It's just a slightly different order, and that's all a relative minor is. So if you're specifically looking for borrowed chords from this, the way that you would do this is that you would compare and contrast the two different key signatures, and essentially this slice is a key signature, or each slice is a key signature, and that's why you have all these different key signatures here around it, showing you what is changing. But you compare and contrast like C and G, well, C major and G major, and then you would see what chords are different, and you would use them interchangeably. As a rule of thumb, it is pretty standard to only really consider the two key signatures on either side of the signature that you're working in as being relatively safe, and you should never really have to worry about it sounding bad. So what that means is if you're working in C major, you could borrow any chord from F major or D minor or G major or E minor, and it should work. It shouldn't sound weird at all. It should basically sound okay. And the reason for this is because they're so closely related and they're so close to each other that it's not going to sound jarring, skipping between them or like jumping between them. And there's only one note difference between each signature, so between C and G, only one note is being sharpened. Same thing with C and F, only one note is being flattened. So when you borrow chords from them, it's gonna sound okay, essentially. Now you might be wondering, well, why when I want to like can I borrow chords from other key signatures like down here? And yes, you can. However, it starts getting a lot riskier, and you run into a pretty large potential that it's just not going to fit or sound very good. So, kind of a common misconception here would be, oh, well, if I'm using C major, I could just easily use C sharp major and pull some chords from that because it's both C, right? And you'd be wrong. Uh, this key signature, C sharp major, is vastly different than C major. As you can tell, almost every single note, yeah, I think every single note is sharpened. So that is gonna completely change the sound of the chords between C sharp major and C major. So if you use a chord from C sharp major, it's gonna sound way out of key compared to C major. So you typically want to stay away from that. There are ways that you can use or like borrow chords from these other key signatures, but I'm not going to get into it just because it gets very complicated and it's kind of a lot. So instead, let's just keep it nice and simple and stick to the rule of thumb, which is you want to stick right around the key signature that you're working in. So, the way that I would do this to find the differences between, say, C major and G major, if you don't know them off the top of your head, just simply write them out. So the way that I would do that is I have this over here. You just write out C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then G, A, B, C, D, E, and then F sharp. And then from there, what you want to do is write out the chord quality. And what do I mean by chord quality? Essentially, is it major, minor, or diminished? So in a major key, it's always major, minor, minor, major, major, minor, and then diminished. So this is the way that you would write it for both of these. And then, to make it even easier to see what the differences are, you would want to essentially rotate this G major around to look like this. This up a little bit. So that way you have C and D lined up with C and D here, and so on and so forth. And then now it becomes very apparent what chords are different. So C is still major, so that's not different. D is different because you're going from minor to major, so this is a difference. E is still minor. This F sharp diminished is different, so this is a different chord. B major is the same, and then A minor is the same, and then you have B minor. So the three chords that are different between these two scales, or these two key signatures, is D major, F sharp diminished, and B minor. So if you use any of these three in C major, it should work and it should sound good still. And we can actually jump to that, and I'll pull up a Logic Pro instance and kind of test it. Before jumping into Logic and showing a demo of this, I quickly just want to explain how you'd write this out if you were writing a chord progression, like writing it down on a piece of paper to say like, oh, I'm going from this chord to this chord to this chord. So normally in music, we don't say that we're going from C major to F major to A minor to D minor back to C or anything like that. What we do is we actually use these Roman numerals to indicate like the actual chord progression. And if it's a big Roman, I always call it a big Roman numeral, but if it's like a capitalized Roman numeral, that means it's major. If it's a lowercase Roman numeral, that means it's minor. And then normally with diminished, you'd have a little circle next to a minor Roman numeral, but the symbol is weird to kind of put. It's like, it looks like a little circle right up, like small circle, but it'd be up in the corner here. So I just write diminished like this to when I actually type it out. But normally, if you were just in C major and you weren't using any borrowed chords, you would go like, let's say I want to go from 1 to 4 to 6. Well, actually, let's go to 2 because this will make it really easy. To 2 to 5, and then back to 1. So this would be going from C to F to D to G to C. And that would be what you would do as the chord progression. Now, when you actually borrow a chord from another key signature, the value of that chord, or like the where it is in that, so in G major, D is the 5. But you wouldn't put 5 in your chord progression. Instead, what you would do is you would just capitalize or make D major. So essentially, if we were using the same exact chord progression here in C major, and we wanted to use the D major, all we would do is we would just take this 2 and make it a big 2. And then that's how you would write it. That's just kind of something I wanted to quickly go over and explain, because if you're actually writing out the chords, you just want to make sure that you're writing them in reference to whatever key signature that you're working in. So yeah, that's essentially what you would do if you borrow chords. You would want to make sure that you're adjusting what the chord would be in C major to whatever it would be related in the related key signature that you're borrowing from. So I just want to quickly explain that, and then now we can take a look at the actual demo that I have. Alright, so I have a couple chord progressions here using the borrowed chords that we just went over with G major and C major. So I'm writing in C major, and then I'm going to borrow some chords from G major. And I'll quickly just show my my chord progression that I made. So the first one that I have is actually the one that we were just talking about, how the borrowed chord is this 2, so this major 2, and it's the third chord of the sequence. So it goes 1, 4, 2, 5, and then 1, 4, 2, 5, and then ends back on 1. But we'll hear the difference between a major and minor D chord here, and it should all sound pretty great. Shouldn't sound weird at all. The next chord progression that I made is a bit more involved, and I just want to show like, hey, you can use more than just one borrowed chord in a chord progression. So in here, I'm borrowing this F sharp diminished here, and then also I'm borrowing the B minor chord. So don't worry about, if you don't know what the 6, 4, and 6 and the 7 means, don't worry about it. This is just an F sharp minor, or an F sharp diminished chord here. And then this is a B minor chord. And that's essentially all you need to know. So these two chords are not in C major, but it should still sound good when we listen to it. So let's go ahead and listen to what this sounds like. So really, the big difference on this one is, I'll quickly go over, it's this third chord here. So it should be the difference between this chord and this one. It's quite a small difference, just note-wise, but it's a pretty big sounding difference if I just go play these first couple notes. Okay, so we have that, and then we have this. So you're going from this minor, this D minor to G major here. So it sounds a lot brighter. But you don't really notice it, and it doesn't stick out to you that this doesn't actually belong in C major. And that's the nice thing about using the borrowed chords from key signatures that are very closely related. You don't really even realize that they aren't actually in the key signature at all. So let's go ahead and listen to this chord progression here. And you can see these are the two borrowed chords because they have these accidentals. And this is the F sharp diminished chord here. And then this is the B minor chord. So just try to see if it sounds weird at all. And it shouldn't. But yeah, this is just showing an example of you can have multiple borrowed chords in a chord progression. So the only thing I can really make note of on this one is, because this is a diminished chord, it sounds a little crunchy because all diminished chords do. So that's the only thing, is when it jumps from this chord to this one, it does sound a little rougher, or like you can definitely tell that there's a change there, but it still sounds good overall. So yeah, that's essentially an overview of using borrowed chords to make chord progressions. So that was my tutorial on the circle of fifths and how to find borrowed chords to kind of help enhance your music. And I hope it was helpful and gave you some kind of inspiration to expand the different chord progressions that you can make. And please like and subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you guys next week.